Very first time video of serial killer William Devin Howell in court, the man believed to be Connecticut's deadliest serial killer.
Behind a strip mall in Connecticut was a secret garden, but this garden wasn't an ordinary garden. It didn't have flowers and greenery, no. This was serial killer William Devin Howell's so-called garden. This is where he disposed of his victims' bodies. William is considered to be one of Connecticut's most prolific serial killers. This monster would drive around in his beat-up blue van looking for victims. It was basically his own personal torture chamber on wheels. He called it his murder-mobile. Hello and welcome back to Crime, Mystery and Mayhem with Kate. If this is your first visit to my channel, hello, welcome. It is great to have you here. Here on my channel, I talk about true crime stories. I find them interesting and I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by why people do the horrible things that they do. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel because it would really help me in my attempts to grow my channel. Also, with this video, there will be a bit of a warning. I will be talking about the R word, SA, drug use, killing people, dismembering them, that sort of thing. So yeah, there's your warning. Here we go. All right, so today I am going to be talking about another serial killer. I seem to be talking about quite a few serial killers lately. I think I need to change it up a wee bit. But yeah, so this is another one. If you guys have any suggestions for another case, let me know. I'm always interested to know what you guys want me to talk about, but apart from that, here we go. All right, so today, talking about another serial killer. This is the story of William Devin Howell, aka the Sick Ripper. He was a very, very sick man, a very disturbed sick man. So let's jump in. All right, William Devin Howell, he disposed of his victims in a wooded area behind the New Britain strip mall in Connecticut. This is he called it his garden. Yeah, his dead body garden. So before his victims' bodies were dumped at his garden, he would R-word and then kill them in his murder-mobile. That's what he called his van. This was a creepy old blue van that served as his personal torture chamber on wheels. So William, he, aka the Sick Ripper, is considered to be one of the most prolific serial killers in Connecticut history. That is not including mass killings. And he would later say that it wasn't actually about the killing part, it was more about the R-wording of his victims. Yeah. So he claims that he didn't just R-word 3 women that was suggested by the prosecution. He said that he R-worded most of them, except for one. He's a very disturbed man. He would also say that his victims should have known that they were going to die because of the lifestyles they led. So he's victim blaming. He even kept one of his victims' bodies in his van for 2 weeks and he slept next to it. Also, this sicko referred to this deceased woman's body as his baby. Yeah. He tried to deny that he said that, but then he came back and was like, no, I actually did say that. So William Devin Howell, he was born on February the 11th, 1970, and he was originally from Hampton, Virginia. William said that he had a good childhood. He came from a loving family, good family, but he was the black sheep. His mind was a mess. He had a lot of anger and he often thought about R-wording women. He spent his early 20s in and out of jail for mainly drug-related crimes. Some of his other crimes were larceny and burglary in Virginia, as well as some arrests in Georgia and New Jersey. So he was constantly in trouble. This is only some. He was in trouble a lot. He also had 2 children, but I didn't actually look into them. I feel like we don't need to talk about his kids, just the fact that he has 2 kids. His nephew in Virginia said that William went to stay with them in the early 90s. But the auntie kicked him out because he kept getting into trouble. So he was only there for like 3 weeks. William had basically burned his bridges with family members, but he continued to write to his family while he was in prison, and he received visits from at least one of his relatives. So once he got out of prison, he went up to Connecticut, and this is where he did some odd jobs like lawn mowing. He was a heavy-set man, and he stood at 5'9", not overly tall, and he was 220 pounds. He had long, dirty blonde hair, and he had a goatee. He also had a tattoo on his bicep that was his middle name. So William got himself a blue 1985 Ford Econoline van, and it screamed creepy. He put a sign on it, and the sign said Quality Lawn Services, and it had his phone number. His van even had 2 broken windows that were covered by plywood. So it just looked like one of those vans that, you know, if you saw parked up, you would probably cross the road. It wasn't, it was creepy looking. It just radiated bad news, if you know what I mean. And it was bad news. So William was a bit of a drifter, and he didn't stay in one place too long. In the summer of 2003, women started going missing. Well, mostly women. There was also a trans female that went missing as well. And most of them had histories of substance abuse. So on July the 31st, 2003, a woman contacted the police because her sister was missing. I'm hopefully going to say her name correct. Her sister was 33-year-old mother of 4 Nilsa Arizmendi, and she had not been heard from for 7 days. Her boyfriend was actually a convicted drug dealer, so he was looked at first as a suspect, but after he went with the police and did a polygraph test, they cleared him. So Nilsa was a heroin user and a sex worker who was living in a motel in Wethersfield with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend told the investigators that they let a guy called Devin Howell stay a night in their motel room, and that he last saw his girlfriend at 2:30 a.m. on July the 25th, 2003. She was getting into William's van. So apparently this couple, they kind of knew William. They smoked some crack with him a little while ago in a motel, and she just popped out this particular night to go buy some drugs. So the police, they went and they wanted to interview William. He was apparently staying at his girlfriend's house. But the thing was, they didn't have a warrant and they couldn't legally hold him. Plus, when they got to his girlfriend's house, she told the officers that he was not home, even though they could clearly see him peeking through the window. He was definitely there, but they couldn't do anything because they didn't have this bloody warrant. So they had to leave, which is freaking annoying. And that's when William fled. He headed south and got the heck out of there in November of 2003. Apparently he actually assaulted his girlfriend and there was a warrant out, and he was going through like probation or something at this time. All right, back to Nilsa. She was born in Long Island, New York in January of 1970, and her family's nickname for her was Coco. She was super close to her 3 siblings, and she absolutely adored her family, and they absolutely adored her. She was just going through a hard time. She was actually a really good person. Everything I've read, she was a really good person. She was just going through some stuff. She was living in Hartford, Connecticut, and she had 4 children that she absolutely adored. She didn't have an easy life. She was struggling with substance abuse, and this did take her away from her kids. But even though she was struggling with her addiction and sometimes doing sex work to make money, she always stayed in touch with her family. And most importantly, she always checked in on her kids to make sure they were okay. So when she didn't check in for over a week, her family members, they got really concerned because it was just not like her to go completely silent on them. A few weeks would go by and still no one knew where William or Nilsa were. That's when a North Carolina sheriff's deputy pulled over William. He pulled him over for a traffic violation in his creepy beat-up van. Officials in Connecticut actually caught wind of this, and they asked the North Carolina police to hold him until they got there. So they agreed, and they held William. Then he was eventually extradited back to Connecticut to face charges for probation violation for what I'm assuming is the assault on his girlfriend. So The police, they got him into an interview room and they started pressing him. They wanted to know if he knew anything about Nelson's disappearance. It was when they actually showed him a picture of her that he refused to speak and asked for a lawyer. He was like, I am not going to talk anymore without my lawyer. So he got his lawyer, and this lawyer talked the good talk, and William was eventually released from police custody. I know it's so freaking annoying, but so many killers in those early initial stages, they do get to go home because the police, they just don't have the evidence yet. Not enough anyway. The good thing was these officers knew he was bad news and they kept an eye on him. They were trying to get a warrant to seize his van, and they really felt like there must be some sort of evidence inside that van because this was the last place that Nelson was seen alive. So finally, in April of 2004, police were able to get this warrant, and they seized his creepy old van. And during their search, they saw that some of the seat covers were missing, which they found strange. Then they're going through this van. Apparently it was really messy. It was a really, really messy van. They didn't know how he could do anything in there, but he did. They ripped up the carpet, and underneath there was a really, really large blood stain. So, bullseye, they got him. Well, not quite. First things first, they need to test to make sure that this is human blood and that it matches their victim's DNA. So they get it, they send it off to get tested, and when it came back, it was a match. So this is good and bad. It's good that they can say, yeah, she was with William in his van and he's related to a crime involving her disappearance, but it also meant that she was likely not alive anymore because there was a lot of blood, like a fatal amount of blood. Also, where's her body? They didn't know where she was. But that's not all this DNA testing revealed. DNA is amazing, honestly, how they can test it. There was also a match to another unidentified woman. And police at this point are realizing that William has more than one victim. Are they dealing with a serial killer? That's going through their minds. The annoying thing was the police could only officially connect him to Nelson's disappearance because the other DNA was unknown. It was kind of like a no body, no crime situation at this point, and things went quiet for a bit there. Then on May the 16th, 2005, nearly 2 years after Nelson was last seen alive, William Howell was arrested, and he was charged with first-degree manslaughter. Better late than never, I guess. So while he was sitting in prison, waiting for his trial, he got chatting to some other inmates, and he told one of the guys in there that he hoped his case would move quickly before they could find a body, because at the time they only had circumstantial evidence against him, and he was saying that, if they find a body, there's a problem for him. Anyway, finally in January of 2007, William Devin Howell went to trial, and he entered an Alford plea, which meant he didn't have to go to trial, and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for the manslaughter charge. So this plea, it's basically used in the US for someone who wants to say that they're innocent, but they're acknowledging that there is enough evidence to convict them. So basically he knew he was, he didn't stand a chance, and he opted for this plea. But that's not the end of the story, not even close, because a few weeks after his sentencing, a hunter that was walking through a wooded area behind the West Farms shopping mall stumbled upon a human skull. And when authorities started searching the area, they uncovered 50 bones that belonged to 3 different people. The sad thing is, they remained unknown for years. So freaking sad. So 4 years later, in January of 2011, officials announced that one of the victims had actually been identified. This victim was Diane Cusack. Diane was 55 years old when she was last seen alive in July of 2003, and she was from New Britain in Connecticut. She also struggled with substance abuse, but unlike Nilsa, who was always, in touch with her family, Diane didn't really keep in touch with her family and had actually not been in contact with her family for years. So no one reported her missing or even knew that she was missing, which is really, really sad. She wasn't even reported missing. It's, sad. And the only reason they know when she was last seen alive was because police had shown up in July of 2003 to her house to sort out a dispute that she was having with her landlord. It's really sad. It's so sad. There wasn't one person looking for her. Maybe she chose not to be a part of her family, I don't know, but either way, I found that quite sad. I would really hope that if I vanished, my family would take notice. But then again, I am a rather loud character in my family, so I'm sure that my disappearance would definitely be noticed. I'm a bit of the black sheep of my family. Anyway, back to the case. So September of 2013 rolled around and they identified another one of their victims. This was 23-year-old Joyvelin Martinez. She was last seen on October the 10th, 2003, but she was actually reported missing quite some time after. Her family had put on a birthday party for her, which was 5 months after she was actually seen alive by anyone, and she never showed up to her own party, which made her family think, oh my god, where the heck is she? So that's when she was reported missing. It said that Joyvelin was a really talented runner, and in high school she had been a track star. I looked into her obituary and it said that her family called her Joy, and she was so loved. I read that she was an amazing person who was just going through a bit of a hard time when she did go missing. Joy is deeply missed by everyone who knew her, and it said that she had a heart of gold with a smile of an angel. It's just so sad. I read everyone's obituaries, and it was just so sad. Another year went by, and that's when they found their third victims. Well, not found, identified their third victim. It's good that, they're being identified, but it's just taking so long. It sucks, but at least they're being identified. Some people are never identified, which is so freaking heartbreaking. So the next victim was 40-year-old Mary Jane Menard. She was last seen on October the 4th in 2003 when she headed out to buy some cigarettes, and she just never returned, which is, she just went out to buy smokes, never came back. She was a mum, and she is also deeply missed by her family. It said that she achieved and overcame so many obstacles in her life, and she was admired for her hard work and dedication. She was very active in her community, and she was loved by all. She was a substance abuse counsellor, and she helped people every day. Mary was said to have a great personality. She loved to sing. She loved the Patriots and the Red Sox. She loved baking, and most of all, she absolutely adored her family. She also has grandkids. It's just so freaking sad. When her loved ones found out that she was one of the identified missing women, they placed flowers and balloons at the back of the strip mall where her remains were found. Her children left a note that said, "Love you, Mum," along with a note that said, "Thinking of you always." Her daughter said that the days haven't got any easier, and it's hard for them. She said that she always thought her mum had got into some sort of trouble, but now that they have found her and identified her, she's just really heartbroken to know that her mum was actually brutally killed. It would be such a hard thing to try and process. I couldn't imagine what the families are going through. So at this point in the case, the state of Connecticut offered a $150,000 reward for any information about the victims that might lead to an arrest. Because at this point, they can't be 100% sure that it was William Devin Howell, even though, they're pretty sure it's him. But they just didn't have enough evidence to charge him for the additional murders. These police were under a lot of pressure. They were under a lot of pressure to get their guy. I would say guy or girl, but guy. This case had been dragging out for quite some time. Then their workload got even bigger when on April the 28th, 2015, 4 more sets of human remains were found in the woods behind the West Farms Mall. It was argued that there may be another killer. It's pretty obvious who the perpetrator is. I just want to take a moment. I want to emphasize that, yes, these women had been struggling with substance abuse issues, but they were mothers, they were daughters, they were sisters and neighbors. It's, they're people. And to this day, every one of them is loved and missed by their families and their friends that they left behind. So I just want to put that out there. All right, back to this new set of remains that were uncovered. And is this going to take another, few years to identify these women? Are we going to be sitting waiting? Thankfully, the answer to that was no, because this time around, the victims were identified quite quickly, within a few weeks. Their first victim from this new find was 29-year-old Melanie Ruth Camillini. Melanie was a mum. She had 2 children when she went missing on January the 1st, 2003. She also struggled with substance abuse. She had been living in the Waterbury area when she disappeared and was last seen with 2 men, according to lostandmissing.org. Her family were used to her taking, some time away. She'd be gone for an extended period of time, so she wasn't actually reported missing immediately. Her mum eventually went and reported her daughter missing in April of that year, when after a few months no one seemed to know where she was. Because even though she would take off for a bit, she always stayed around the area. She never went too far. So Seymour police read a statement from Melanie's family at a press conference, and it thanked the agents that worked together to bring them closure. They can put her to rest. Melanie is so deeply missed by her loved ones. It's just heartbreaking. So the next identified victim was 26-year-old Marilyn Gonzalez, who left her home on May 16th, 2003, and she never returned. She was a sister, a daughter, a mother. Marilyn has family who loves her so much, and they miss her so much. Her family continues to grieve her loss and have actually asked the media not to contact them. She was also a mum. It's just so sad how many children lost their mums because of one sick individual. This case, my goodness, so many kids affected. She had 2 little girls. So sad. She had 2 little girls at home when she went missing. Her daughters were only 11 and 7 at the time. Now, all these years later, she'd be a grandma. One of her daughters had a beautiful little girl. It's so sad that she was so cruelly snatched away. The third victim was 44-year-old Janice Roberts, a transgender woman who was last seen getting into a dark blue van on June 18th, 2003. So she lived her life as Janice, but her birth name is Danny Lee. Janice was the only male victim, so it's likely that William didn't realize that she was trans. Janice was a restaurant worker for Ponderosa for several years, and also had 2 children. She's greatly missed by her family. There is actually more to talk about regarding Janice that William has said, but I'll go on to that shortly. And finally, the last victim, the one I spoke about in the beginning, Nilsa, the lady whose disappearance got this whole case rolling. She was finally found, and she was finally laid to rest. Okay, so let's do a recap, bit of a recap. All 7 victims disappeared in 2003, and these cases remained unsolved until William Devin Howell became a suspect in Nilsa's disappearance in April of 2004. So the police had taken the DNA from her family members that was then matched to the blood in William's van. Also, when the police went through the van, they found 6 videotapes. They were really disturbing, of William having bizarre sex with women, but the videos were shot in such a way that you couldn't see their faces. Because Nilsa's body was yet to be found, William was charged at that time with first-degree manslaughter. They couldn't, go for a murder charge, first-degree murder charge, and later was also charged with witness tampering after threatening another inmate who was, ratting him out. So this inmate, he told his dark secrets, and this inmate was an informant for the police on this case. At sentencing for the manslaughter charge, he insisted that he did not kill Nilsa and argued that the bloodstains were from a physical fight that she got into with her boyfriend inside his van. He also tried to get his Alford plea thrown out, claiming that he had only entered this particular plea because his public defender pressured him to. But that didn't happen, and he was sentenced to the 15 years in prison for manslaughter in the first degree. So in prison, William told his cellmate that there was a monster inside of him and described himself as a sick ripper, which led to him being referred to as the sick ripper by media, and now me. He also told the inmate during a card game that he kept one of the woman's bodies in his van, like I spoke about, for 2 weeks, and because it was too cold outside to bury her. Apparently he slept next to her and called this victim his baby. He said that he cut off the tips of her fingers, dismantled her bottom jaw, and disposed of her body parts in Virginia. So he's confessing to this cellmate, and the cellmate is then going and telling the police. He said that he would drive his victims to a remote parking lot, duct tape their mouths, then he would R-word and then strangle them to death. He also told his cellmate that where he buried their bodies, he drew a diagram of the wooded area that was behind that mall, outlining the shallow graves of his 7 victims. This map was actually key in finding the last 4 bodies. So he also admitted to going back to the woods in 2004 to check on the graves, and when he saw that one of the graves had actually been dug up by animals, he freaked out. He tried to look for the remains, but he got spooked. Apparently, it was quite a public area. Like, there's, a lot of foot traffic, there's cars and whatnot. So those missing remains were actually found by the hunter that I spoke about in 2007. They were the remains that led to the recovery of the other victims. William actually said that if he hadn't been caught, he would most likely have continued killing. He would later tell author Anne K. Howard that Nilsa had wanted a ride, but instead he just grabbed her, worded her throughout the night and into the day before he killed her and threw her down the hill into his makeshift garden. His cellmate also told investigators that William's first victim was Melanie Ruth Camillini, a woman I already spoke about, and she had been worded, strangled, and hit in the head with a hammer. He said that he hit her in the hammer first, but I don't know. Apparently it was Melanie's body that he kept in his van, sleeping next to her for 2 weeks while calling her his baby, because it was too cold to put her, bury her. William later said that he never did that and that it wasn't true, but I don't know. I kind of believe that it was something he might have done. The investigators were getting all the information from this informant that they needed, and they would soon be able to charge him with these other murders. William also told author Anne Howard that he did sleep next to Melanie's body, but he only slept beside the body because he had no choice, and he said that he did not call her his baby. But there must be some truth to it, right? William also admitted that he cut off Melanie's fingertips to try and conceal her identity and dismantled the bottom portion of her jaw before throwing her body parts into a dumpster behind the dollar store in Hartford and disposing of the rest of her body in what would become his graveyard behind the strip mall. Sick man. Then he spoke about Marilyn Gonzalez. He said that he kidnapped and R-worded her throughout the night before he stopped at McDonald's and bought her last meal. Apparently this became kind of a thing that he did. He would assault the woman, then get her McDonald's, and then he would kill her. So his exact words, this is what he said to that author: "I'd go through the Mickey D's drive-thru with a half-naked, tied-up woman in the back and told them if they made a sound, it would be their last. None of them did." So this is a statement that he wrote to Anne Howard, the author who wrote a book about him. I'll actually put a link up because the book is very, very interesting. William always said that his assaults on these women were never about the killing. Like I said, it was about the R-wording. That's the part he liked. But because he didn't want to get in trouble, he didn't want to get caught for R-wording people, he killed them so that they couldn't tell the police about what he'd done. But I'm pretty sure the punishment for SA and the R-word is a lot less than a murder charge. Anyway, he told the author Anne Howard, "I just killed them to conceal the evidence. I knew that once I R-worded them, they would go to the cops and I'd end up back in jail. So I had to keep that from happening. I definitely did not enjoy killing them. As I choked them out, I was thinking, just hurry up and die." This guy, honestly, I've read a lot of Anne's writings, and he gave her so much information, and it is so disturbing. This guy he's disgusting. He annoys me. How's about not R-wording and killing people and maybe try to be a decent human? I mean, this guy had kids. I honestly hope that his kids disowned him, but that's up to them. He's just such a monster and he enrages me. Okay, so while he's spilling his guts to Anne and his cellmate, the investigators were working the case and they managed to recover DNA from 6 of the 7 victims from his van. One really sad aspect of this story is because of the elements and animals in the forest where he buried his victims. Only one of the victims' bodies were, intact, and the authorities don't know if they'll ever be able to find the missing bones of the other victims. Yeah. Meanwhile, back in prison, William is saying that he had been raised by a good family in a good home, but he was plagued by the R-word and he had fantasies of R-wording women and he had anger. And he said that one day something in his mind just kind of switched and he turned his fantasies into a reality. Apparently this mind switch happened after he got into an argument or a fight with his girlfriend. His exact words to True Crime Daily in 2019 were, "I don't know, something just made me say, well, tonight's the night I'm going to cross the line. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make my fantasy come true." He said that the killings were something he chose to do because he was selfish. So, at this stage in the investigation, it was looking like they were going to be able to charge him very, very soon. But I'm surprised they hadn't already. But yeah, they needed all the information. The authorities were still putting their case together, and the Connecticut State Division of Criminal Justice was only able to link him to R-wording 3 of the women. Yeah, but he said he R-worded all of them bar 1. William knew the walls were closing in on him, and he decided that he was just gonna plead guilty to the 6 remaining murders in 2017. He said that he wanted to spare the victims' families the agony of a trial. Yeah, that's what he said. He wanted to spare the victims' families the agony, and he didn't want to put them through more heartache. But I'm not sure if I believe that. Like, I'm thinking if maybe he just wants this whole thing over and done with, and that's why he decided to plead guilty. But at least it would be over. These families, they could start to move on, and they could look this monster in the eye and tell him exactly what they think of him. So yeah, off he went to his sentencing hearing, and this was in 2017, many years after the actual killings and R-wording, and he told the court about how he R-worded all of his victims except for Janice Roberts, the transgender. He said that he picked Janice up in New Britain after leaving the Cadillac Ranch in Southington, and that she was wearing a short miniskirt and high heels and had long, shiny black hair. He thought that Janice was a woman. He didn't realize that she was trans. So then he drove to a nearby grocery store parking lot and paid $20 for a blowjob. And when he put his hand onto Janice's head, he pulled off a wig, and that's when he discovered that Janice was actually transgender. So this angered him, and he went into a fit of rage and bashed her to death. Janice's sister April actually spoke directly to William at his sentencing hearing. She was so brave, and this is what she said, so I'm going to read it. "Your size and force ripped away lives that didn't belong to you. I hope that the words that you hear today resonate in your soul for the rest of your life. You may be able to protect yourself physically in prison, but there is no weapon that will protect you from your own thoughts." Yeah. So William, he was really emotional throughout most of his hearing, and he spoke to the victims' families directly, and I'm just going to read part of what he said. So he said, "First, I want to apologize to the victims' families. I know everyone wants to know why I committed these crimes. I don't have the answer. I do not know why I did it myself." The thing is, he told his cellmate and the author Anne Howard why he did it. He liked to R-word women, and then he killed them because he didn't want to go back to prison. So there you go, that's why he did it. He just wanted to R-word women. He's sick. And look where that got him, bloody idiot. Anyway, during his sentencing hearing, he cried and apologized a lot. But I honestly don't have any sympathy for it because of what he did. He told the court that he deserved the death penalty and his acts were monstrous, cowardly, and selfish. Agreed. But he's just a terrible person. I do not have any sympathy for him. Do you guys? Let me know. He spoke again to the families, and he said, "I know what awaits me, a slow, painful death in prison." He also talked about his diabetes and possible limb amputation and organ failure in the future, and he went on to say, "I hope that provides some comfort to each of the families." Tiffany Menard, the daughter of Mary Jane Menard, she spoke at the hearing as well, and she said, "Words cannot express all of the pain and anguish so many of us have had to endure since the murders. With every ounce of blood that runs through my veins, I want to hate you. But all I can do is pray that God can forgive you for all you have done. And I pray that He will give us the peace to continue living our lives." So, oh my God. So William was wanting to be sentenced to death, but that just wasn't an option because capital punishment was actually abolished by the state. So instead, he was sentenced to 360 years behind bars and is currently serving 6 consecutive life sentences in the Cheshire Correctional Institution. So basically, he's exactly where he needs to be. We do not need someone like him roaming the streets. He is exactly where he needs to be. And those tears and whatnot, I don't know. His victims deserved so much better than what this monster did to them, and they should be remembered. Just because most of them had substance abuse issues does not mean that they are less human than anyone else. They're people. These victims were sisters, mothers, aunts, daughters. They were deeply loved by their families. Rest in peace, ladies. So I'm going to go through the victims. Mary Jane Menard, she was 40 when her life was snatched away. She was the mother of 2 children who was a former addict. But she had turned her life around and she became a substance abuse counselor. She's so missed. Joyvelene Martinez was only 24 when she was killed. Her family grew suspicious when she didn't show up for her birthday party. In high school, she had been a track star. Her family, they miss her so deeply. Diane Cusack of New Britain, she was 53 when her life was taken. She hadn't been in contact with her family at the time, so no one reported her missing, but I am sure that she is also so missed and loved by her friends and family. Melanie Ruth Camillini was 29 when she was murdered. She had 2 children. She often went off for periods of time, but always stayed in the area. She is greatly missed by her family and friends. Marilyn Gonzalez, she was only 26 when she was killed. And she was also a mum. She had 2 children at home, and she is deeply missed by her family and her loved ones. Janice Roberts, she was 44 when William savagely beat her to death after discovering that she was trans. Janice had 2 children and is very missed by her loved ones. And finally, Nilsa Arizmendi. She was only 33 when she was brutally killed. Her family reported her missing quite quickly, and she also had children that she loved so much. She is greatly missed by her family and her friends. This story is so tragic. So tragic. Like, these women, they could have gone on to do something. They could have got themselves better off the stuff. It's just, oh, it's so sad. It's so freaking sad. I say that a lot, so sad, because it is. It is so sad. But yeah, so as I was saying about him crying and stuff in court, after I read that, I then read that he beat someone up in prison, like after all of this, and he was put into isolation. So that kind of shows me that he did not change his ways. He's still an angry little man. Well, not little, he's a big man, but still, he's an angry man. Does not deserve to be out and about. So yeah, that is today's story about a horrible individual, and how sad it is that so many women and children, there were so many kids, so many of these women had kids, and Janice had 2 kids. Like, it's just, oh, so many people affected by one person's actions. That just, it really tears you, right? Like, yeah. What do you guys think about this story? I think this one's going to get me. I haven't actually been too affected by a story in a while, but I worked on this one for, a week and got to know the victims, if you know what I mean. Like, you kind of get to know them, and then you get to know him. There was more information about his girlfriend, but like nothing really too interesting. Just that he had assaulted her and he got probation and whatnot. But yeah, so that, and the fact that they still haven't found all of the bones, that's sad. Like, when you get buried or cremated or whatever, you'd hope that your entire body, like all your bones, would be there in your casket. But yeah, it's just sad. But at least the victims were still laid to rest. Okay, so that is the story for today. I hope everybody is doing all right. Everyone's having a wonderful morning, day, night, whatever it is where you are. and I will be talking to you later. See you later, guys. Have a great day.
First time
Bye.
video of serial killer William Devin Howell in court, the man believed to be Connecticut's deadliest serial killer.